Hey folks, how's it going? Today I'm going to be going over every single general tip I have for Rocket League beginners. We're not diving that in depth on any sort of topic, but this video is meant to be your main central resource for learning about anything on a basic level. We're going to cover everything from training to settings, rotation, mechanics, and so much more. And just a fair warning, for the sake of keeping this video as short as possible, I'm going to be referencing a lot of videos in the description that you can check out if you want to dive deeper into anything we talk about today. If you don't know me already, my name is Wayton. I make educational Rocket League videos as well as some creative content mixed in. My goal is to be the first channel you look at when you want to learn something new about Rocket League. With that out of the way, let's jump right into the tips. Also real quick, this is just an editor's side note. I want to let you know that I've broken this video up into sections so the tips one after another actually relate to each other. The first section is about training and getting better. The second section is about how to deal with teammates. The third section is about positioning, rotation, and strategies. The fourth section is about settings and other random stuff. And the last section is about the mechanics and terms of Rocket League. The sections should be timestamped in the video, and if they're not, they are in the description, so if you want to skip to a certain part, you can check it out there. Alright, that's it. Now let's get started. Tip number 1. If you haven't already, do the tutorial. You can find it by going to Play, Training, Tutorial, and you can do the basic version and the advanced version, even if you're just starting out. They're both important, and it's definitely necessary, so do that if you haven't. Number 2. Warming up is very necessary. If you really want to climb the ranks, it can be really useful to spend some time in free play when you first launch the game to get your mechanics warmed up. Then you can move on to playing a couple casual matches to get in the right mindset of playing with a team, and after that, you can move on to playing ranked and you'll be at a much greater advantage than everyone else. Number 3, use training tools correctly. Free play is where you go to warm up and practice your ball control, which is basically what you do when you're trying to dribble or keep it close in some way. And custom training is where you go to actually train and get better at particular types of shots and saves, but you can use free play for that too. Custom training is just better if you want to practice something specific. Number 4, there are specific training techniques that will help you get better faster than others. Like, there are definitely ways of practicing that will actually generate bad habits for you. So if you want to learn more about how to train correctly, there is a link in the description for a video I made about how to train properly so you don't generate those bad habits, and there's also a video about my top 5 favorite drills to do in free play. You can watch those if you want. Tip number 5, play in slow motion. If you feel like you're playing slow, you can try playing for about 10 minutes on slow motion game speed, so that way, when you go back to playing normal, you're going to feel like you're just the fastest player out there. You can do this by going to Play, Custom Games, Private Match, Create Private Match, and then go to the mutator settings and set the mutators to Match Length Unlimited, Game Speed Slow-Mo, and Respawn Time Disable Goal Reset. Go ahead and hit Create Match, and now you're basically in free play, but it's like half speed. Do that for about 10 minutes, and then go back into real free play, and you'll feel so fast. Seriously, try it. It's actually crazy how well this works. Tip number 6, limit your boost usage. In free play, you can try going to options and uncheck this box that says unlimited boost in free play, and now you can practice managing your boost when you're warming up if you're constantly finding that you're out of boost all the time in game. Tip number 7, do not try playing with cold hands. This is one of the most annoying for me. When I'm playing with cold hands, I'll notice I'm just having a much harder time trying to hit the ball or do whatever I want mechanically. Now, I'm not saying don't play in general. A trick I like to use is just running my hands under very warm water for a couple minutes to warm them up, and then I dry them off completely so the water just doesn't make my hands cold again a couple minutes later. Works every time. Tip number 8, you get better in Rocket League by practicing what you're not already good at. It can be really tempting to go into training and just practice your favorite mechanic or favorite training pack every single day, but you'll get better faster if you practice what you aren't already good at. Like, you still won't be very good if you can do this crazy aerial ceiling shot thing, but you can't do a normal ground shot 9 times out of 10. Practice the skills that you aren't very good at and that you would use often in real games. Tip number 9, watch people's gameplay. Sometimes it can help to watch some gameplay that is slightly better than yours before you start playing. This will give you an idea of how you should be playing if you want to rank up. But if you're just starting out, I wouldn't recommend watching pro gameplay, because that's just on a whole other level and you probably can't learn as much from it. I'd recommend watching better players' gameplay almost every time before you play. Number 10, save your replays. If you're playing really good one day and you just keep on winning, don't forget to save some replays. It's really important because on another day where you feel like you just weren't playing as good, you can go back and look at those replays and try and see what you were doing differently. This should hopefully get you back in that mindset you had when you were playing good originally. Number 11, chances are, if it exists in Rocket League, there's a tutorial for it. Don't be afraid to search something that you're confused about and watch a couple of videos about it. Especially if it's one of my videos, then you should definitely watch them. Tip number 12, ask streamers for tips. There are plenty of high-ranked streamers on Twitch that don't have very many viewers. This means you can hop into one of their streams and feel free to ask them for some tips, and chances are they're going to answer. You can trust me on this. I used to stream to just a couple viewers a while ago, and it would have been really nice to have someone in my chat that wanted to learn something. Simply asking them for tips will make them happy, and you get to learn something out of it. It's a win-win. Tip 13, get coached by someone better. There's a website called Gamers Ready that has a bunch of Rocket League coaches, including myself. So if you want to buy some coaching from anyone, that's the place to go. Link in the description. Number 14, don't respond to angry teammates. When you're in-game and you have a teammate that thinks you're awful or they're just tilting like crazy and trying to vent their anger out on you, just don't type to them. It can be really tempting to type back and write them an MLA-formatted essay about why they're wrong in this situation, but that only tilts them more, and in some cases, they'll even just stop playing altogether. If you want the best chance at winning, just don't type to your teammates when they're mad, even if it's words of encouragement. Tip number 15, don't be that guy to type to your teammates in anger. Even if it's not in anger, it can still make the situation worse and cause your teammates to overthink and play even worse than before. Even if all you're doing is giving them a small piece of advice, chances are it's not going to help because they could either take it the wrong way or they'll just try and keep track of too many things and make bad decisions from thinking too hard. Tip number 16, change your chat settings. If you'd rather just not interact with anyone, you can change your chat settings by going to options, and then in the first tab, you can change the text chat to whatever setting you want. Tip 17, play in a party. Sometimes if all you do is play in solo queue, which is getting paired up with random teammates, you can be putting your team in tough situations without even knowing it. But if you play in a party with people you're in voice chat with, they can directly let you know when you put them in a bad situation so you can learn how to be a better teammate. I'll also link a video in the description for a video about how to be a good teammate in solo queue if you want to dive deeper into this topic. All right, real quick, let me recap what we've covered so far. So far we've talked about training and how to get better and how to deal with teammates. Later in the video, we talk about settings and the terms and mechanics of Rocket League, but in this next section, we're going to talk about positioning, rotation, and strategies. Tip 18, Rocket League is a team game. You shouldn't be constantly challenging the ball at all times. Instead, you should see it as going for the ball and then going to the back of the line. You're essentially taking turns with your teammates, which is called rotating. If you don't rotate, that's called ball chasing, so you don't want to do that. Number 19, learn how to rotate. So there are different types of rotations that depend on if you're on offense or defense, and there are plenty of tutorials that cover those topics. But I'll put a link in the description for the best overall rotation guide from a YouTuber named Verge. It's a perfect introduction video to teach you how rotations work in general anywhere on the field. If I could only give one tip on this topic, I'd say to keep in mind that there are no position players in Rocket League. You move on to offense as a team and defense as a team. There's no goalie, striker, or midfielder. Tip number 20, learn back post rotations. After you watch Verge's video, I'd recommend watching my video on defensive rotations, which is also linked in the description. Especially if you're just starting out, a lot of new players tend to overcommit completely and leave their net wide open as they move on to offense. Because of this, you don't even normally need to know how to rotate on offense, since you'll mainly just be scoring off of counterattacks from defense. Honestly, watching the back post video in the description is one of the most important tips I can give. Most players don't know how to rotate properly until they're already at like platinum rank, and even then they still struggle with it. You'll be at a huge advantage if you can learn this early on, so check out that video in the description. Tip 21, don't neglect the mini pads. Obviously, the mini pads around the middle of the field don't give very much boost individually, but there are so many of them that they are absolutely worth paying attention to. When you go for a big boost pad, you're putting yourself out of the play for a few seconds, which can be really risky. But when you go for mini pads, you're just grabbing them along the way without leaving the play. Not to mention the fact that they're aligned around the field in a way that almost perfectly complements the common rotations of Rocket League. Only go for a big boost pad if you're already near one and you have plenty of time to grab it. Most of the time, they pose as more of a distraction to new players than anything. Number 22, don't use boost when you're at supersonic speed. So when you're going really fast, you'll notice that you'll get these lines behind your wheels. That's called a trail, and it pops up when you're going supersonic speed, which is practically as fast as possible. Because of this, you don't want to be using boost when you're already going that fast, since it won't make you go much faster. You should instead just save your boost whenever you see that trail pop up. Tip 23, use the walls. If the ball is in the air and you don't think you can reach it, you can just drive up the wall to make it easier on yourself and to save boost. You might struggle with this at first, but getting comfortable on the walls is an essential skill to have if you want to get good at this game, and you'll be at a big head start if you start practicing it now. Tip 24, get comfortable with ball cam. For some of you who are used to racing games, you might be tempted to use car cam most of the time, but I'll tell you right now, you won't go very far with that. The only time you should be using car cam when you're first starting out is when you're lining yourself up to grab some boost. Tip 25, use car cam to look around. Well, this contradicts what I just said, but it's something to keep in mind. After you get comfortable with switching to car cam when you're going for boost, you can start using car cam when you're looking for your teammates and opponents as well. Sometimes I'll be in a situation where I have full boost, so I don't need to collect any more boost, and I'm rotating back, but I don't know where my third teammate is. So to check, I'll quickly tap car cam to look back and see where they are in rotation, and then I'll make my decision of if I'm going for the ball or not. Teammate awareness is really important for rotations. Number 26, only flip when necessary. It's important to keep in mind that whenever you flip to gain speed, you can't change the direction of your car until you land on your wheels again. So whenever you flip, you're completely committing to that direction. Some players can run into issues with this because they'll flip right as something is happening and then they can't turn back and adjust until they land on their wheels again. So be careful about that. Tip 27, use flips to help with rotations. Now, for the same reason as before, you can use flips to indicate to your teammates that you're committing in a certain direction. This is important because you might be near the ball in one play and your teammate could be unsure of if you're going for it or not because you could cut in at any time. But if you flip away from the ball, then your teammate knows you're not going for it since you wouldn't be able to go for it until your wheels land again. So when you want to tell your teammates that you're not going for it, just flip away from it and that'll let them know. Tip number 28, you are not bad at Rocket League. Well, I mean, that's kind of a vague thing to say, but what I mean is that Rocket League is a game where nobody is naturally good. For example, someone could spend a ton of time playing shooter games and they already have a bunch of natural skill in the next shooter game that comes out, despite never playing it. But with Rocket League, there is no game that's even close to being similar. No one starts off playing Rocket League with any natural skill from other games. For practically everyone, including myself, when you first start playing Rocket League, your gameplay will probably look like this. And that is totally normal, so don't let it discourage you. It takes a ton of practice, but you'll improve before you know it. Number 29. Although there are a ton of different types of cars, there are actually only 6 unique hitbox types. For example, the Octane and the Fennec, despite being different cars, actually have the same exact hitbox. If you were to watch pro gameplay, you'd see that most of them are using the Octane or Fennec, and that's simply because that's what they're most comfortable with. If you want to learn more about car hitboxes, there's a link in the description for a video that goes more in depth and tells you how to choose the perfect car for you based on your playstyle. Tip 30. As of right now, you can only type to people in-game that are on your same platform. So if you play on PC and you type something in chat, the only people who will be able to see that message are other players who are also on PC. Because of this, some people prefer to only play with others that are on their same platform. So if you want to only play with people that you can type to, you can go to Options and then uncheck this box here that says Cross-Platform Play. Now you'll only be matched with people who are on your same platform. Number 31. Change your camera settings. Right now. Please. The default camera settings are not good at all. It's so important to watch a video or two about this tab right here. I promise you it'll be worth it. There's a link in the description to a video I made about camera settings that covers everything you need to know. But if you don't feel like watching a camera settings video, I'll tell you right now that you should turn your field of view to at least 100 at the minimum and turn off camera shake. And if you want to try out my settings, they are on screen now. You can copy them down if you want. Number 32, change your control settings. Now, I'll be honest, my controls definitely aren't default, but they are not something I would recommend. So, you know what? I'm not even going to show you mine. Nah, I'm kidding. Well, I'm not kidding, but for real. I highly suggest you watch the video in the description about control settings, because you can only go so far with the default controls before you'll run into issues. And changing them after you've already built up a ton of muscle memory is one of the most annoying things to do, so you should probably change them early on. Tip number 33, change your nameplate scale. So a problem you might run into while you're playing is having trouble seeing or noticing where the opponents are. Especially when you learn how to dribble, if you have the nameplate scale on default, which is just 100%, sometimes you literally can't see the opponents at all. But if you turn your nameplate scale up, I personally have it at 200%, it becomes way easier to see the opponents. Tip number 34, turn off vertical sync. A lot of people don't know this, but if you're experiencing input lag, meaning your button presses are slightly delayed when they appear on screen, it could be because you have VSync checked. What VSync does is reduce screen tearing, which is what you're seeing on screen right now. Depending on your system, when you uncheck this, the screen tearing could become unbearable and you have to change it back immediately. But if you can handle it, it is 100% worth it to leave it unchecked. Input delay is definitely one of the worst things that you can play with. Tip number 35, kickoffs are incredibly important. There's a bunch of different ways to do your kickoffs, but there's really only a few options that are actually viable. In short, driving up to the ball and flipping into it is not one of the best options. And of course, I've linked a video below for the best kickoff tutorial out there in my opinion, so I'd recommend watching that as well. Number 36, kickoff strategies are also important. If you're playing with a team, the overall strategy you have with your kickoff for where each player is going can actually have a huge effect on if you win or lose more games. If you have a good kickoff strategy, you can be the first team to go on offense almost every single time, which is really useful. You can imagine it like you're taking turns at having scoring opportunities. Obviously, you would want to go first so you could be the first team with offensive pressure. In short, one of the best kickoff strategies you can have is by having one player obviously go for the ball, and another player drives up near the ball slowly, and the last player goes for a corner boost. I've linked a couple videos in the description talking about different kickoff strategies that you might find useful. Alright, we are now going to move on to the terms and mechanics of Rocket League, so we'll start going a little faster here. Of course, there are so many terms in Rocket League, I couldn't possibly name every one in just one video, but these are the main ones you need to know if you're just starting. So let's get into it. A 50-50, or just a 50, is when two players are trying to force it past each other with pure power by flipping into it. When someone says they're in net, that just means they're defending from inside the goal. The net means the goal. A dodge is basically just a flip, so if someone says you should have dodged forward, that just means you should have front flipped. A wave dash is where you flip just as your back wheels are hitting the ground and it gives you an extra speed boost. An aerial is when you use your boost to fly up to the ball. Almost anyone has the ability to do this by just jumping, leaning back, and boosting, but it takes hundreds of hours of practice to make it efficient and precise. A pinch is where you take your car and you smash the ball between you and another surface. It could be a wall or the ground on the other side, or it could be off another player or the ceiling, but that's really advanced. You can get some crazy power with this if you time it just right. Making a read is basically just trying to see where exactly the ball is going to bounce next, off of a player or a surface. Usually when you tell your team you're reading, that just means you're going to go for the ball next. A demo is short for demolition, and it's when you blow someone up and they respawn after 3 seconds. You have to be going supersonic speed in order for them to blow up though, which, as I mentioned earlier, is when you have that trail behind your wheels. This means you could be chasing someone at max speed and just barely reach the bumper of their car and they're gonna blow up. But if you're going slightly beneath max speed and you totally sideswipe them, it'll only count as a bump even though it seems like that would do more damage. A challenge, or contest, or push all mean the same thing. It's basically when someone else has possession and you're driving up to them from the front to disrupt their control. Cheating means you're creeping up on the play to try and follow it up. Usually if a 50-50 is about to happen and I'm near the play, I'll try and cheat by creeping up near it to follow it up immediately after the 50 happens. This is also a really common strategy to use on kickoffs. Dribbling is when you have the ball on your car and you're making small adjustments to move it around. Technically, when you're getting multiple touches as it's rolling on the ground, that's also called dribbling, but most of the time when people are talking about it, they're referring to when you have it on top of your car. A catch is when the ball is falling down from the air and it lands on your car and you start dribbling. It helps to line your car up with the white circle on the ground for this. A flick is when you're dribbling with the ball on your car and you flip in a particular way to launch it away and you can get some crazy power. This is one of my favorite mechanics in the game. If you want to learn how to flick, there's a tutorial in the description to a complete guide I made on how to master them perfectly. A fake is when you look like you're going to hit the ball, but you end up just not hitting it all and the opponent goes flying past it. Some people like to tell the opponents they faked it when they just genuinely missed. This is also known as the funniest and most original Rocket League joke of all time. A dunk is kind of like a 50-50, except one player is getting there later than the first and they still end up winning it and sending it past them. A clear is when you get the ball out of the danger zone in front of your net. It's usually just one solid hit that gets it out. When a team is putting on a lot of pressure, that basically means they've been on offense for a while, and it's only a matter of time before the defense runs out of boost and gets scored on. A redirect is when you're on the opponent's half and a teammate passes it up to you and you simply redirect the trajectory towards the goal. Sometimes it's in the air and sometimes it's on the ground, and if you're really advanced, sometimes you can do it off the backboard. A doink is pretty much a redirect where you single jump right as the ball is about to land on you. It's kind of something you just get a feel for, but it's really satisfying when you score one. A half flip is this weird flip thing that helps you turn around with momentum so much faster. It's definitely important to learn, and I've left a link in the description for a video tutorial for it. A double touch is when you hit the ball off the backboard and then again into the goal all in one aerial. These are really tough to read on defense. An air dribble is where you carry the ball in the air by getting multiple touches on it. It's really hard to do if you're just starting out, so I wouldn't worry too much about it, but it's nice to know what it is anyway. A ceiling shot is where you drive up the wall to the ceiling and you let your wheels fall off and you flip into the ball. Since you fell off of the surface instead of jumping off, you actually have your flip infinitely. Usually when you jump from the ground, you have to use your flip within 1.5 seconds after jumping, or you won't get to use it at all. But if you fall off a surface, that 1.5 second timer doesn't exist and you can use your flip at any point. That's what makes the ceiling shot so tough to save. But then again, this is a more advanced mechanic that you probably won't need to learn for a while, but it's still good to know. A flip reset is where you actually use the ball as that surface to get your flip off of. It works the same way. You land on the ball from underneath and you use your flip to hit the ball. It's one of the most difficult things to pull off, but also one of the most difficult to defend. Again, this is something you probably won't actually use competitively until you're in like the top 1% of players, but you should know about it anyway. Freestyling in Rocket League is pretty much a combination of the last 4 terms we covered. Some people like Rocket League not because of the competitiveness, but just because they love hitting cool shots. Those players are called freestylers, and they focus entirely on improving their mechanics so they can hit cooler goals. And it's pretty insane how good they are at it. Okay, we made it. Those are all my general tips for beginners starting out in Rocket League. There's so much more that goes into Rocket League that I probably couldn't cover entirely if I did this my entire life, but this should be the best central starting point for new players to go. If you made it this far, I salute you. Thank you very much. I hope you were able to take in all this information. You might even need to take notes on your favorite tips or watch the video multiple times to get the most out of it, because there's so much stuff in here. If you made it this far and you're not a beginner, what are you doing? Why are you watching? Well, I appreciate it. That actually means a lot, so thank you. And of course, if you're not already subscribed, please feel free. I'll be making many more helpful videos like these in the future, and apparently almost all of you guys are not subscribed to the channel, so I'd appreciate it if you hit that button. Other than that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.